Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to the next in the series of SMDP webinars. We're really pleased to have everybody here today. We have had a record registration for today's webinar. As always, if it turned out that you had colleagues that wanted to come and they couldn't come for some reason or other, we are going to record this, and it is going to be available for everybody probably sooner than usual, probably within a day or so. We should have this available up on, everyone who is registered will get an email letting you know that the recording is available, and then it'll be up on our website within a day or two. Before I introduce our speaker for today, I do want to give you a little background on other activities that we're involved in. Some of you have actually registered for the SMDP Tanzania, which is starting in 2 weeks, and this will be focused mainly on savings groups and on pro-poor enterprise and value chain development. The next SMDP program that will be offered will be in March in Accra, Ghana, in conjunction with in cooperation with the Ghana Microfinance Institutions Network. And we should open registration actually earlier this year, probably as early as November 1st, if everything goes well. We're also excited to say that in 2013 we're going to be offering more webinars at least once a month, other exciting learning activities including hybrid courses that start face-to-face and go online, or vice versa, start online and then end up face-to-face, and other activities. So pay attention to the SMDP website. We'll try to do our best to notify you of these events. Most of you are on our mailing list, and hopefully we can be a very useful source for education for practitioners, as we have been for the last 13 years. Today I'm really pleased to have a colleague of mine who I've known for several years, who's actually been in the faculty of the MDI, our previous program, and last year we got a chance to work together on putting together the first global summit of savings group practitioners at the Arusha Savings Group Summit. That was actually 1 year ago today that event was taking place in Arusha. Now Candace is going to be talking to us about another one of her passions, which is the whole topic of financial education. I want to give you a brief background on Candace, and then I'll let her take over. Candace is a consultant with Microfinance Opportunities. Her title as a consultant is Senior Technical Advisor. She's an accomplished writer, trainer, curriculum designer, researcher, and grants manager. As Senior Technical Advisor to Microfinance Opportunities, she has been involved in writing multiple curriculum modules, including Young People, Your Future, Your Money and Risk Management and Insurance, Protect Your Family's Future. She's trained trainers in French and Spanish and outlined national strategies for financial education around the world. She's also designed financial education curriculum for CARE, Burundi's savings group program with adolescent girls. And at the SEEP network, Candace coordinates the Savings-Led Financial Services Working Group, which is an inclusive platform for sharing savings group experience among a wide range of practitioners. She will be at the SEEP conference in a month, and we also will, at the end of the program, we'll tell you about Microfinance Opportunities offering a workshop during the SEEP conference. But let's get to the webinar. Let me tell you that along the way, look at the little question box in your pop-up window, and that will allow you to type in questions as we go along. We're going to pause a couple of times during the presentation, which will be about 25 or 30 minutes long, to give you an opportunity to, or I will actually ask those questions. If you have asked a question and you want to follow up, you certainly can. I'll be monitoring the questions and paying attention to exactly what's going on, so that we can hopefully get everybody's questions answered and try to have as good a discussion as possible within 1 hour. So without further ado, I'm really happy to introduce Candace Nelson, who will be talking to us today about financial education on the pathway to financial inclusion. Candace, welcome.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks to all of you for giving me this opportunity to talk about a topic that I'm very passionate about. I would like to start today with a definition of financial education. You see it there on your screen. This definition is really about personal financial management. Two observations are in order before we dig a little deeper. First, financial education is about behavior change, about changing how one manages one's money. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. Second, the term financial management tends to call up images of banks, advisors, stockbrokers, but personal financial management occurs every day with or without access to financial services. Indeed, we all know the book Portfolios of the Poor shows how poor people juggle up to 14 different financial instruments, mostly informal, in their daily financial lives. Putting aside money and protecting it from multiple daily demands involves one set of attitudes, but moving that same money, moving savings from an informal savings club to a bank account is a different action requiring different knowledge and attitudes. So financial education needs to help people at whatever point they find themselves to understand their options and actively choose among them. Okay, Bill, my slide's not advancing. Okay, there we go. Sorry. So at a basic level, financial education can give people the confidence they need to exert control over their finances, to plan for their future, to save, to borrow wisely. But we all know the financial services landscape is changing very fast, and so too are the goals of financial education. When Microfinance Opportunities first started advocating for financial education 8 years ago, its objectives were largely linked to these basic premises related to saving and budgeting. And while these remain, believe me, very valid, we're now talking about helping people to choose service providers and compare their products. Furthermore, as consumer protection gains traction, financial education is also linked to that train, because consumer protection is likely to be more effective when clients are informed. So this morning, my remarks will follow that evolution, from the basic content that we pioneered to a more integrated vision that links financial education to a larger financial inclusion agenda. I always have to say this when I talk about financial education. I have to talk about what it is not, and it is not business education. People tend to confuse these two things. So I need to clarify that financial education, as I see it, is really a precursor to business training, and it's relevant to a much broader group of people, not just entrepreneurs. Back in the early days of microcredit, it was common to tie loan access to training, and that training was usually focused on business skills and loan management. We never questioned whether people needed to learn basic personal money management. We were so excited about the new window that had been opened, we flew through it with a singular focus on credit. So if I could redo any part of my career, I would have been designing financial education curriculum back in the 1980s, before the business skills materials I wrote. It took me 25 years to get to it, but here I am. So who is it financial education for? Well, the answer is simple. It's for anyone who makes decisions about money. Of course, the educational content will be different depending on the target group. Financial education for youth will likely focus on what kids need to know as they anticipate independence from their parents, but financial education targeting older adults might focus more on preparing for retirement. Let's look at an example of two target groups to see how the educational objectives will differ. So if you're working with people who are already participating in the formal financial system, your educational objectives might focus on helping them gain the most benefit from bank products and services. In contrast, if you're offering financial education to the unbanked, you may target more those behaviors that help people stabilize their finances and eventually possibly move to the bank in the formal system. The point is that each program, each curriculum will be different as it responds to a distinct target group. It's also important to point out that personal financial management is not static. It changes as you move through your life, and therefore the need to upgrade one's knowledge about money management never really goes away. What you save for, what you borrow for, how much you borrow will change as you age. And we've found that these points of transition, from dependent child to independent young adult, from married woman to widower or divorcee, usually involve some change in financial status and needs. And these points of transition offer teachable moments for financial education. I said earlier that financial education targets behavior change. To support that behavior change, we focus on a combination of attitudes, knowledge, and skills. And sometimes this slide obviously shows a change in attitude, but sometimes the change in attitude leads to a change in behavior. In targeting attitudes, knowledge, and skills needed to promote behavior change, Microfinance Opportunities uses a multi-step approach. The first step is to identify what current behaviors are, especially those that might be counterproductive to one's financial goals. So you have to ask, what keeps the people you target in your target group from saving? What are their unnecessary or frivolous expenditures? How do they decide when and how much to borrow? Do they budget or plan for their expenditures? You gather this kind of market intelligence that will help you design financial education to help people understand their bad habits and move towards more productive behaviors. Let's look at a simple example. Most people want to save, but they find it impossible. This is familiar to most of us. Early on, we did market research in several countries and found some of the common reasons for the savings challenge. People don't know where their money goes. They save when they can, but often they can't. Savings aren't linked to a goal, and therefore people have little motivation to save. But when you look at the behavior of successful savers, you find people who avoid unnecessary expenditures, they have a goal and a plan for achieving it, and they save regularly. Financial education can be the bridge helping people transition from these current desired behaviors to desired behaviors. Okay, so following that process that I've just described in a very truncated way, Microfinance Opportunities, together with Freedom from Hunger, developed a curriculum and trained trainers around the world to deliver it. This slide shows many of our resource manuals that cover, all of our resource manuals that cover 9 themes. There are so many themes that could and should be developed still. But most of the ones we have are available in English, French, and Spanish, and some are available in Arabic, Chinese, Russian, and Portuguese. You can find them on the web at www.microfinanceopportunities.org. Bill, I'd like to stop here for a second to see if there are any questions.
Actually, we don't have any questions at this point, so why don't you proceed?
Okay, that's good. Unless you're all bored to death. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit. We've talked so far about content. I also want to talk about delivery, the where, the how, and how often that learners interact with financial education. This is the other side of the coin, and it's equally important as content. The very word education conjures up images of classrooms, teachers, desks, benches, schoolrooms, and indeed much of the curriculum that I've mentioned has been designed for use in what we call face-to-face training, where a trainer engages directly with a group of learners in a classroom, under a tree, in a veranda. But there are many ways to deliver financial education, and its messages are or could be everywhere. So I want to spend a few minutes on the methods of delivery. This is where we're seeing some exciting developments. The best method, I've described direct training, and this method is best for interaction between learners and between the trainer and the learners, for engagement with the material, for problem solving, and for developing a depth of knowledge of the material. For these reasons, I think face-to-face training is really the best method, but I've been told that I'm a little bit old-fashioned. It is also an expensive method, and it's difficult to do at scale. Initially, visual tools such as posters and comic books were developed as resources to aid direct face-to-face training. But we're finding that they serve as popular communication tools that serve a wider audience, and that's their advantage. They tend to contain simpler messages that can be consumed by more people. Mass media, obviously, reaches the masses. In East Africa, there are a very popular TV series called Makutano Junction, had 13 episodes built in part around financial education themes. In Kenya, a radio program promoting insurance incorporated testimonials, quizzes, and advice from experts. Videos can play in public spaces that have captive audiences, such as banking halls or bus stations. Campaigns to promote a simple message like, "Have you saved today?" or warn people about a common threat can be mounted on billboards and other signage. And finally, technology is opening a lot of new ways to deliver financial education. And we're just beginning to experiment with some of these. SMS messages deliver money management tips and reminders to save. Financial education can be delivered online and as preloaded applications on tablets. For example, MFO is working in Colombia and will distribute tablets with preloaded financial education applications to organize groups of women who are recipients of conditional cash transfers. Okay, if you want to look a little bit more closely at a couple of these programs in detail, in Kenya, the radio campaign that I mentioned was put on the air to educate the public on microinsurance and to help low-income Kenyans become informed consumers of risk management products and services. The campaign ran for 13 weeks on 2 national radio stations in Kikuyu and Swahili. 2 types of programs were used, a long one and a short one. The short feature was used to market the longer feature. Segments of 2 to 3 minutes containing insurance education messages were aired 3 times a day. The longer program was a 14-minute program, and it was broadcast weekly during an evening business show. Each program featured a short drama, advice from an industry expert, testimonials, and a listener quiz with prizes. The weekly quiz competition encouraged listeners to participate by sending answers to simple questions via SMS. Winners were awarded cell phone airtime, and the answers were read during the following week's program. We did a follow-up at the end of the radio program, and this was some of the listener reactions. This is a summary of the listener reaction that we found. This is not exactly an evaluation, but really just to find out what people captured from the program. And we were actually pretty pleased with these results. In the Philippines, a program combines direct training with text messaging on saving, budgeting, debt management, and mobile banking. Clients received these messages twice a week over a course of 5 weeks. In follow-up interviews, clients responded positively to the SMS messages because they trusted their banks and they found that the messages were informative. They liked the messages about savings best. They shared them with others, indicating that text messaging can have a multiplier effect. Interviews revealed that the SMS reminder messages prompted most of the clients to save more, although not necessarily at their bank or through their cell phone banking service. Other clients reported that SMS messages helped them to reduce expenses or have their loan payments ready when they were due. So illustrated materials have been used successfully to support financial education with low literacy groups. In each case, a trusted intermediary helped communicate the messages from the materials to the learner. For example, in Cambodia, even workers who had difficulty reading preferred a magazine because they could always call upon a literate friend or colleague to help them read it. In India, field agents used an illustrated flip book to convey simple, concise financial education messages. And in Burundi, financial education was delivered to girls in savings groups. Comic books were then introduced and read by the literate members and discussed at the group meetings. The girls then took all those comic books home where they were able to share them with friends and family. I want to talk a little bit more about this Burundi program because it's one that I know personally was involved in. After some market research and extensive conversations with CARE Burundi, Microfinance Opportunities designed 18 learning sessions, approximately 30 minutes each, to be facilitated by the group promoter. The session titles are listed on this slide. Oops, I got it again. This slide. We tested and revised its curriculum, we trained trainers, and then we left CARE to implement the program, integrating financial education into its savings groups. In the end, CARE used less than half of these 18 learning sessions, leaving the others for another phase of the program. They focused on the first 7 topics that you see on this list, transforming them into the 7 strategies of saving. These 7 strategies of savings, I must say, became the talk of the town. Each group developed its own song about the 7 strategies of saving. At each meeting, the girls discussed a specific strategy, relating the strategy to their own personal experience. Now they can actively debate the relative merits of all of them, and everyone else wants to learn about them. The girls' parents, their brothers, their boyfriends, the care staff, the drivers, the watchmen, anybody in and around the Ishaka program were all talking about the 7 strategies of savings. These 7 strategies became part and parcel of CARE's savings group methodology. They were so tightly integrated with the actions of the savings groups that they became sort of fused. But near the end of the program, Microfinance Opportunities and CARE developed a series of 4 comic books about a bad girl, and all the girls who joined the Ishaka program were considered bad girls. This girl learned how to save in her group, and she eventually needed a loan for her business that her group couldn't provide. So the comic books trace her journey towards accessing a bank loan. And that sort of was the next phase of CARE's work with these girls. Okay, so again, there are some lessons that we've learned from this NASIC experience in financial education. Most of them are common to any educational program. The education needs to be relevant to the target group, needs to be adapted to the market, to the context. But I would like to talk more specifically about the last 2 lessons on this slide. People need opportunities to apply their skills. You can have the best financial education program in the world, the best curriculum, tested, revised, refined, etc., etc. It won't be as effective if people don't have a way to use the new skills they've learned. And that's where the financial service providers come in. Financial education targets the consumer, but to be effective, it needs providers. And together, educators and providers can build financial capability. Before I go to the next slide, I'll stop again, Bill, to ask if there are any questions.
We actually have a quiet group today. Nobody is asking any questions yet, but feel free to ask questions as we go along, folks.
You guys are making me feel bad. Okay, so
must mean you're doing an excellent job of explaining things if there's no questions, but we'll.
Well, okay, so I just said the word financial capability. And this leads me to the next slide, which is a little bit of a vocabulary lesson. As financial education has grown more popular and become more the talk of the town, new terms have cropped up. And I think there's some confusion over the distinction between these 3 terms that you see on the slide. Financial education, as we have said, is the process of building knowledge, skills, and attitudes to become financially literate. Financial literacy is the ability to make informed judgments and take effective actions regarding the current and future use and management of money. The challenging concept is that of financial capabilities. In my mind, financial capabilities brings together informed clients with appropriate products in the marketplace. The acquisition of new behaviors doesn't occur in isolation, simply through exposure to key financial education messages. To be fully financial literate also requires the opportunity to practice these new behaviors, which in turn depends on access to financial products and services that are appropriate. So this interactive process is what is often referred to as building financial capabilities. Okay, we've defined financial education. We've talked a lot about how it's delivered, but I think it's important to note that financial education seems to have gained favor almost overnight. When I first started working on it about 8 years ago, few people knew what financial education was, and fewer people still even cared. Now, calls for financial education and building financial literacy are coming from every direction. What's changed and what's the urgency? Well, I think you can cite a lot of factors, but I'm going to focus on 2. The first is the changing landscape for financial services, and the second is the adoption of a financial inclusion agenda by many governments and other important institutions. Growing competition, first of all, let's look at the financial landscape. We know that there's been an explosion of service providers that are targeting services down market. And in this changing landscape, there are several new developments. One, expectations for high returns in saturated markets can lead to predatory lending. There are a lot of new products out there that clients may or may not understand, and the availability of multiple loans from an array of lenders is associated with growing levels of over-indebtedness and default. So despite the advantages of increased access and a greater diversity of products, many poor consumers find themselves still at a disadvantage. They don't always know when, how, or if to use these new offerings. Financial education offers them tools to make informed choices. An equally important driver for financial education is this growing adoption by many governments of a financial inclusion agenda. As I understand it, the goal is to bring the unbanked and the underbanked into the formal financial system. Branchless banking makes this agenda more attainable because of its ability to penetrate into areas where many financial institutions have been unable to reach. Millions of unbanked cell phone users will be able to open bank accounts. Yet, alongside this exciting potential, there are very real concerns about consumer abuse, with the prospect of bringing inexperienced people into the financial system relatively quickly. Increasingly, people are acknowledging that financial inclusion must be achieved by responsible finance, another vocabulary term. Responsible finance is equitable, respectful, transparent, and appropriate to consumer needs. CGAP and others have defined or identified 3 legs of responsible finance. First, the industry has to behave better. Second, consumers need to be informed and capable not only of understanding product features, but of exercising their rights and responsibilities vis-a-vis the provider and its products. Finally, government must use its authority to protect consumers and incentivize good practice. Of these 3, perhaps the most progress has been made on the self-regulation front. The Center for Financial Inclusion launched the SMART campaign several years ago, which proposes a set of consumer protection principles that hundreds of providers have agreed to implement. This is an impressive effort, and it has attracted a lot of attention and awareness to the issue of consumer protection. However, it can only be so effective alone. Self-regulation needs educated consumers and government legislation to achieve responsible finance. So what are the implications of financial inclusion for financial education? I think there are probably many, but I'm going to focus on one short-term implication and one longer term. The first, I think in the immediate term or short term, I think we need to address the benefits and risks of branchless banking. If the cell phone is an important key to reaching the goal of financial inclusion, financial education will be key to its effectiveness. The prospect of millions of unbanked cell phone users having access to a bank account practically overnight is both exhilarating and scary. While people can easily master the cell phone functionality, they often don't understand the financial management decisions behind the keypad. Indeed, where cell phone banking has been introduced, uptake initially is robust, but the usage rates have tended to be low. In a study carried out by CGAP, mobile money managers reported that less than 30% of their registered users were actually active. It's one thing to make it easy for every cell phone user to open a bank account. It's another to help them understand how to maximize the benefit of that account. Everybody has a role in making this happen. I think the longer-term implication of the financial inclusion agenda for financial education is the need to shift the campaign for financial education from the micro to the macro. From introducing financial education one MFI at a time, it needs to be on the agenda of the central bank, the Ministry of Education, and a myriad of development NGOs working in health, agriculture, literacy, etc., etc. This is beginning to happen. It's slow. Several countries have or are developing a national financial education strategy that bring private and public sectors together to advance financial education and consumer protection. There are some NGOs, I'm thinking specifically of Aflatoon, that target youth, and they are making inroads with ministries of education. But I think it's important to recognize that financial literacy is a long-term goal. It will take at least a generation to make significant progress towards it. So we need to be working on many friends. It's not just a financial product. And the reason I say that is because I don't see financial education as a financial product. I see it as an educational product. Okay, so this morning I tried to introduce you to financial education, what it teaches, the exciting developments in its delivery, and its importance in today's changing financial service landscape. I think that as this slide tries to show, excuse me, financial education is a tool that brings clients and providers in closer alignment and helps make the marketplace more effective. The goal of financial inclusion is both inspirational and possible, but it has a dark side with the possibility or the potential of too many undisciplined providers chasing ill-informed and needy customers. Financial education promotes basic money management, but coupled with a high degree of industry self-regulation and government muscle, it is also a cornerstone of responsible finance. Okay, that's it. And I hope somebody has a question for me.
Well, indeed, there are a few questions. I'm going to start with a question from Philippa Costa. Oh, wait, I see that Philippa is not here, but it's a good question, so maybe he'll come back and listen, but she's right now dropped out. But I'm going to ask the question, and you can answer. The 7 strategies of savings are related to difficult concepts and decisions for low literate groups. So at what stage of their financial education are these 7 strategies developed?
Well, the 7 strategies of saving, as I explained, were presented and cultivated really within the context of VSLA group, CARES VSLA groups with young girls, savings groups for adolescent girls. And they were taken one strategy at a time, one concept at a time. And so we developed learning activities around each one of those strategies. And each strategy, each week, groups would tackle one strategy. And I don't think there's necessarily a right time or a wrong time to present those strategies, because if you look at them, they're really basic. They're very common. I mean, they're very relevant to almost anybody. So I think whenever you can introduce them, they will be helpful to people who are struggling to save.
Okay, I see that Philippa came back. It looks like she lost her connection for a minute. So Philippa, you might have missed the first part of Candace's answer, but this is being recorded, so you can go back and listen to it. She was able to ask it. And as we go along here, if you do want to ask a follow-up question or anything, then please go ahead and ask. I'm going to go on to the next question. This is from Smita Smeti. Hopefully I got your name right. Candace said that direct training, in her opinion, is the best method, but is difficult for high costs and scale. In your experience, Candace, how have people and organizations and institutions effectively covered their costs if their preference is to use direct training?
Well, this is, one of those $60,000 questions. And it's a question that I think is raised with respect to any educational offering, not just financial education. So I think to date, programs are using the same strategies we've always used to cover those things for which there isn't a built-in income stream. And that means, sponsorship, corporate sponsorship, grants, industry support, government support, and client fees. And people have tried combinations of those things. In truth, I'd say the vast majority are still working with grant funding when it comes to educational offerings, at least in financial education. But I think that you will see a shift towards shared responsibility for funding financial education as we move forward.
Okay, and Smita has asked a follow-up question. She says that knowing that one of the most important considerations in the design of training content and delivering is making it relevant to the target group, how have microfinance opportunities and freedom from hunger determined or evaluated or assessed the capacity of their target market, and not just capacity but the relevancy to the target group?
Well, we almost always start with some degree of market research. And sometimes the term market research connotes more sophisticated surveys and telephone interviews than the kind of thing that we do. But we definitely make an effort to determine some of the basic financial behaviors that are keeping people from achieving their goals, and identifying those. And not only identifying the behavior, but identifying the behavior in a specific context, so that we can then adapt our curriculum to address those behaviors. I can give you a it's almost such a simple example. I hope it conveys what I mean. But market research in the Dominican Republic showed us that young girls who were going to be participating, not young, teenage girls who were going to be participating in financial education, spent a ton of money in the beauty parlor. Every time they went frequently, most of their free cash, if you will, was spent in the beauty parlor. So we were able to design our curriculum to address that and get the girls to identify and admit to where they were spending their money, and then identify alternatives to their weekly visits to the beauty parlor. They could do each other's hair, they could go without, they could go once every other week. There were lots of things that the girls came up with in order to save a little bit of money, set it aside, and do something other than go to the beauty parlor. So it's always, our market research may be just as simple as that, as identifying the thing that our learners are doing in a specific context, so that we can then address that specific behavior and help learners identify how they're going to change it.
And Patricia Pulido has asked the following question. Have you got any financial education successful experiences from the United States or in Europe? And what are the differences between doing financial education in developing and developed countries?
Well, this is such a good question, and I'm not going to be able to answer it as completely as I would like to, mostly because I just haven't been involved with financial education in the U.S. Or Europe. I do remember, however, when we first started in developing our financial education curriculum, this was some years ago, we looked at U.S. curriculums that had been developed in the U.S. And it was interesting that many of these had been funded by banks. And what jumped off the page at me was the degree to which they were targeting helping people use bank services, and in ways that weren't even available to most people in developing countries. So we looked at these curriculums, and they were about balancing a checkbook. Well, checkbooks probably will never be in current use in developing countries in many places. They had all kinds of fancy online tools to help people balance their checkbook, develop Excel budgeting worksheets, all these really kind of fancy, cool, high-tech things that 10 years ago we weren't really thinking about when we were thinking about educating poor women in the village about money management. So I can't say that we spent a lot of time looking at these curriculum, although they are definitely there, and there are a lot of financial education programs in place in both Europe and the U.S., but I just don't know very much about how they're done and with what impact. I'm sorry to say.
Okay, well, we need more information about that. Candace, Smita has actually asked another question, and she says, thanks, Candace. How funny that your example is from the Dominican Republic, since I am located in the DR. What organizations are using the financial education and microfinance opportunities Freedom from Hunger being done in the DR?
Oh, you're taking me back. I think it's a Demi, but I am not exactly sure. I think it's, yeah, I want to say a Demi. And the reason I'm quite hesitant is that the program that we were involved with took place 4 or 5 years ago, and so I'm kind of not as, my memory is not serving me very well. But I think it was a Demi. And if anybody out there listening knows the answer to this question, please help me.
All right. we actually did get a response regarding Patricia's question about financial education in Europe, and Philip Acosta has offered that I'm not sure, but I believe Microfinance Center in Poland are doing some financial education in Europe. I suggest that Patricia looks at their website. Pauline Leonard says, hi, I'm currently disseminating a financial education program in West Africa. Do you have any tools for low literate people, especially concerning budgeting?
Yeah, I think if you were to go to the microfinance website, you would see we have a module, a full resource manual with a number, with a full curriculum on budgeting, and I do believe it's available in French. Although I'm not sure the French version is downloadable, but you could look at the English version. If it's relevant to your needs, you could contact Microfinance Opportunities and see how to get the French version. And I should say that that particular module was not developed for illiterates specifically, so that you'd need to do some work in adapting it. But Microfinance Opportunities might be able to respond. They may have access to other sources that I don't know about. Because somebody may have already done that.
Okay. I believe that is the last question. Is there additional questions anyone would like to ask out there? Well, we have a few more minutes left. If so, go ahead and type them in. What I think I'm going to do right now is, Smita says thank you. I'm going to see if I can get us over to the Microfinance Opportunities screen so you can see their website. You're probably not seeing the right screen. Bear with me here. There we are. This is very easy to get to. It's microfinanceopportunities.org, and I think the webinar page that advertises Candace's webinar actually has the link to it. Those of you that are attending the SEEP conference, which will be in the early part of November, Microfinance Opportunities is offering a training session on branchless banking training that will be presented by Julie Lee of Microfinance Opportunities, and it should be a really interesting and useful discussion. And there are a lot of resources on the Microfinance Opportunities website. We're really happy to be able to bring Candace here today to be able to share with you her knowledge of doing financial education. She's one of the leaders in this field around the world, and it's an increasingly important topic with more and more focus on client protection and really having informed and active clients of microfinance organizations, savings groups, and other institutions. So there aren't any additional questions. So, oh, wait a minute. Did I get, I'm just getting a clarification on Pauline Leonard's question. She says, thank you. My question is more about how can someone that can't write create a budget?
Well, you can use, I guess they would probably need to be able to count. If they can count, you can develop systems with counters, and visual images like icons to denote the different budget categories. I think it's challenging, but I don't think it's impossible. And I think that sometimes, writing things down, we often tend to think that a written budget is the be-all and end-all, but I think many of us probably get through our lives without writing a budget. We have it in our heads. So if you can get people to think about it, if you can get people to create, I can think of lots of active games where you could have people develop, you could give people a budgeting exercise where they used counters, you devise some kind of, as I say, icons to denote the different budget categories, and you could give them problems. You had this much less income this month. How do you change your budget? Where are you going to take money from? Or you got a budget, you got a windfall. What are you going to spend your windfall? What are you going to do with it? How are you going to allocate this additional money to your budget? And I've done it with bottle caps and peanuts and dried beans and all kinds of stuff. So that's one thing. I mean, you could do visual if they can. I mean, some people can't really hold writing influence. It's uncomfortable for them. They've never done it, or they just aren't comfortable with it. But if they are, you could do it just with making marks. Like 4 marks and then a diagonal line across to indicate numbers. I know that I'm suggesting the methods I'm suggesting would require some degree of numeracy. But most people can do some level of counting. So those would be quick ideas off the top of my head.
Okay, great. Thank you, Candace. And that was a response from Pauline. She says, great ideas. I'll try them. Thank you. All right.
I mean, there are lots of, please, I would encourage other people if you have ideas, because people have done this. I mean, Oxfam America in Mali has organized almost 500,000 people in savings groups, and those groups all do oral accounting. They keep track of the money that they have collected and the money they've given out to each other in loans and the money that's been repaid with interest orally. So it's possible.
Yeah, it's a pretty brilliant kind of sequence memorization process, and I think they do use stones and other objects to help in the process, but it's basically patterns that people are remembering, and it works, and it works for something like 244,000 members, or I don't know what they're up to right now, but it's a pretty large program. Okay, well, first I'd like to thank Candace for her time and effort in putting the presentation together. As I told you all in the beginning, we will be posting this recording up on our website in the next day or two. We did have a lot of people who wanted to attend who might not have been able to, but we actually had a lower turnout than we expected, so I think everybody who wanted to get on probably did. And I want to remind you that we do have one more webinar that we are going to be offering in the 2012 series. This will be a webinar with one of our own here at the Carsey Institute, Michael Swack, who is the works with the Carsey Institute Center on on Social Innovation and Finance, and Michael teaches a microfinance class here at UNH and is actually one of the founders of the predecessor to the SMDP, the MDI. And Michael will be doing some predictions on the future of microfinance. Very interesting. We actually had this presentation and discussion at the certificate program that we ran here back in June, and I think it'll be quite interesting. We'll put some information up about that for you soon, and invite everybody to be a part of that. And I want to thank everybody for their attention and their great questions, and again to thank Candace and Microfinance Opportunities for being able to present really valuable information to us here today for the webinar. So we're finishing 11 minutes early, which is a record. But I guess we've exhausted all of your questions, and we're really pleased that we were able to be with you today. And just a little local announcement is that former President Bill Clinton is driving down the Main Street here in Durham, New Hampshire, USA right now, part of his campaigning for Barack Obama. So I just thought I'd mention that to people who might be interesting. Again, thanks so much. Everyone have a great evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are, and hope you'll come back and join us again for a future webinar. Thank you and goodbye.